Welcome to Gracefully Graying. I am your host, Attorney Henry Gornbein. Today on Gracefully Graying, I am pleased to welcome as my guest Bloomfield Township Supervisor Dani Walsh. Welcome to Gracefully Graying. First of all, Dani, please tell us about your background.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's always a pleasure. My background is I've lived here in the township for 52 years, born and raised, and actually am back in the house that I grew up in. Had to remodel it because of some storm damage in 21, but my mom, myself, and my husband are all back in that original house. I grew up through the Bloomfield Township or Bloomfield Hill School system. I went to Booth School, then BHMS, and graduated from Andover. Went to the University of Michigan. And during COVID, since I have ADD and can't sit still very well, I actually went back for a double master's in a master's of public administration, which is like a business degree for the public sector, and master's of public policy. Work-wise, my background has varied quite a bit, doing the same kind of things, but in different industries. So, for example, I started in commercial lending, then went to the medical field, dealing with manufacturers for medical supplies. I worked in green energy solutions, companies that do cultural training for Fortune 500 when they're sending expatriates across to work for GM or Ford or any of them, and operational management, strategic planning. So, although there's different industries over the 30 years, it's been the same concept of you have something that's amazing. How do you make it better, more efficient, more receptive to what at that time was buyers? Now are my buyers, my stakeholders are my fellow neighbors. I can definitely say my most important job has been representing the township, first as a trustee and now a supervisor, because it truly is. It's not just a business. This is home. This is important. So although the first 30 years got me to being here, this is honestly my favorite thing.
Supervisor Dani Walsh, what prompted you to run to become the Bloomfield Township Supervisor?
Well, you can just call me Dani. I'm not too big on titles. And most people aren't really sure what a supervisor is because they're used to the city terms of city manager and mayor. But what prompted me was I actually didn't think I'd ever get into politics. I originally went to U of M for political science, and after 2 years switched majors into science with a business under a business minor. But watching how when I remember across the street from me was a horse farm. Now it's beautiful homes. So our development tended to be mostly residential or anything that benefited the residents, like restaurants or small retail. We used to have like Roz and Sherm. We had all these amazing things for the township. And when I heard that what used to be at Maple and Telegraph on the northwest corner was a Vic Tanny's, Hogan's, and Bojack's, that whole area was going to be knocked down, and there was going to be a storage facility, 24-hour storage facility, that's 4 stories. So it would have been the largest building in our township. It would have been 24 hours. And it is not something that benefits the residents. And it usually involves transient movement. It increases rat issues and the lighting issues. So friends in Foxcroft warned me what was happening. So we kind of got 150 people to show up to that meeting and stop it. And I thought, wow, how did something like this almost happen in Bloomfield Township? I mean, it's unfathomable. So I thought, well, I better start paying a little bit of attention. So that was 2015, I believe that happened, 2014 or 2015. And then in 2016, after seeing, again, just more things that didn't feel like Bloomfield Township, I decided to run for trustee. And after 4 years of that, realizing this is really similar to everything I've ever done. It's an amazing township, which you consider as a product. It has a wonderful workforce, which are your coworkers. And it's just not there anymore. It's kind of like I always mention that we were like BlackBerry. I loved my BlackBerry. I never thought I would ever leave BlackBerry. Every time there was a new BlackBerry, I'd buy it. And then they just stopped. They stopped evolving. They got to the top. They figured we're BlackBerry. Nobody will ever knock us off. And then up comes iPhone. And as iPhone kept getting better and better, BlackBerry kept looking worse because it never evolved. And the saying that you got here is what you would hear probably from them is, this is the way we've always done it. No need to change, until it's too late and you're all of a sudden gone. So we had that happen in 2019. No changes, no adjustments for 50 years created a budget crisis where all of a sudden, even though they had been subtly cutting police and fire and everything along the years to try and survive, since they hadn't changed the way they forecast trending, any budget 101 concepts, we were in a budget crisis and we were cutting services, cutting staff. And it was an embarrassment to find out by the state that something as important as our other OPEB, which is other pension, other post-employment benefits. We had $164 million structural deficit, and we were at the bottom of the state for funding. So while neighbors were funded 80%, 60%, that was us down at 6%. It was us in the city of Inkster. So that whole concept of, wow, we got here because nobody's thinking evolution. Nobody's thinking, how do you make it get better? And that's when I decided to run for supervisor. Was this is a great product. It's got a great workforce. It's an amazing, there's no township like us. We can be better with some strategic planning, with some operational management, with everything that you need. And within a year, we were starting to bring back services and we already had a surplus. So we've had a surplus every single year. We've been able to put money away for capital too, so that we can keep it liquid, so we won't have that problem. So really it was just watching it evolve of things could be better in a place that's already great. Things could be even better. Things could be wonderful if we evolved. And instead of being like BlackBerry, who went like this, we would not just compete with iPhone, which I consider is when you're thinking about residents and businesses and attracting them to your area. I want to be better than Birmingham and West Bloomfield and Grosse Pointe and all of those that you essentially compete with for workforce or for residents. And I feel like we're getting there, and we already within 4 years have made great strides.
Dani, I love your enthusiasm. I mean, it's great. Why don't you tell our viewers, you were elected 4 years ago. You are now running for re-election. What are your duties as a township supervisor?
So that is, again, the term is interesting because townships are typically more rural. We're what's called a charter township. So my role is a little bit more like a city manager and a city mayor in one. So I make jokes that townships are very efficient and frugal. So instead of two people, we do it in one job. So by day, my responsibilities are, I have to develop, the biggest statutorial responsibility is I develop and oversee the budget. That is approximately, when you add in all of our large general fund, the operational fund, all of our enterprise funds, such as water and sewer, it's about $135 million. We have 13 departments. I run 11 of them. That includes, I don't want to forget any of my department heads, but that includes police, fire, senior center, building, planning, ordinance, engineering and environmental services, cable, IT, accounting, assessing. I think I got them all. So then there's the other two departments are run. There's the clerk's department, which is run by Clerk Brook, and the treasury department, which is run by Treasurer Shostak. So I oversee, we have about 300 employees, 255 full-time, the rest are part-time. And I oversee all but 10. So it's a big job, but I do love it. That's the daytime. The nights and weekends is the mayor version, I guess, of it, where you get to shake hands and kiss the babies. I run board meetings. Sometimes those are easy and quick. Sometimes, like our last one, it goes on for 5 hours because we did have some issues in the community. So that is, to me, one of the most important as well, is keeping calm. It's natural, unfortunately, for some elected officials, especially when you're thinking like partisan areas of state and federal, you have to keep this community calm and you have to keep the board calm. So that in itself is a full-time job, but it is one of my favorite things, because I don't know if you remember how much drama used to be at the Bloomfield Township board meetings. but you used to have infighting. You also had issues of pitting people against each other. We've gotten rid of that. We have 7 people who just show up and do the work and do what's necessary. And it's been an honor to serve with them. And even more, the residents just continually surprise you at those meetings. The ability, the eloquence and the think tank that exists here. It's just, that's one of my favorite things, is going to those events, the ribbon cuttings, the board meetings. That's where you get to actually get that hands-on learning from the residents of what they want.
Danny, I remember some of the acrimony that went on years ago. So yes, it's nice to work from a calm environment.
Yes.
Tell us about your goals, and you alluded to it a little bit about how the fact that fiscally we were in trouble and now we're not. What are some of your goals for fiscal responsibility, and how are you achieving them?
So each year it kind of evolves different. The first year it was saying, what happened? How do we get here? And how can we quickly do some immediate fixes? So that first year was realizing a lot of the issues were not, again, that budget 101 of, you can't just look at what do you have in front of your face right now. And these were 1-year budgets. There was no long-term planning. There might have been in water and sewer because there's long infrastructure. You have your capital, but most of the departments had no guidance from and again, it's from the position of the administration that would give that guidance of, okay, well, what's your 3-year plan? What's your 5-year plan? So that you can get those trends. You can see forecasting and know that 3 years from now, you have a lot of capital coming due. And that's what happened at that perfect storm of when the state said you're underfunded here, and they hadn't planned for all these vehicles they still needed to buy. We were $4 million short because nobody thought about what's next year. So we now have up to 5-year planning for the budget. So every department has for 5 years, whether it's their capital, as small as software costs, all the way up to vehicles, which those can, for a new fire truck, be $1.7 million. For a snow plow, it's over $500,000. So one vehicle can throw off your budget. So having that plan of knowing what's coming when, you can forecast for it. Also, I don't make the mistake that some do of, if something is an ask and it's something that can only be done for 1 year, you don't give a service that you can't maintain. So when we were not fixing budget issues and had to cut services, that was horrible, because those are services that we as residents get used to. So the plan is you just shouldn't be spending more than you're taking in, which was a part of the issue. And the ROI has to be worth the cost. So what we did was that first year of what services were cut, what were the most impacting to their lives, and let's bring those back first. So each year services were brought back to the point where last year, all the services were renewed and everything was available again. So instead of, it would have been tempting to jump that first year we had a surplus of, let's bring it all back. But instead we did kind of a methodical, and same with responsibility of staffing. They had to constantly cut staff when there were a budget crisis because they weren't planning. Ours is, you ramp up staff. Now within 4 years, we've brought staffing levels back to pre-recession levels. So it's not just pre-2019, but pre-2008. So it's that, it's using data instead of, it's that pragmatic look at, what is the data telling me? What can I give? But I don't want to ever have to take it away. So that's kind of it, is just forecasting, trending, and looking at the numbers.
Danny, you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation about the fact that we have been like the BlackBerry and had to go to the iPhone and Apple products. What is being done about technological modernization in the township?
So that too kind of evolved. Again, I think I make this joke frequently too, is when I say technology, most places you're thinking they're up to like the late 2000s and you're just trying to get up to 2024. Technology here was probably 30 years behind. So we were using software that hasn't been supported, which means nobody in IT is even making upgrades for that software for 20 years. So that in itself, you're using 20-year-old software that isn't even up to today's standards, that we weren't taking credit cards. So if somebody had a water bill and they're living in Florida, you couldn't pay it online. You couldn't use a credit card. You had to either send in a check and hope that the post office got it there in time, because there have been issues, or you had to come and drop off cash. So during that winter time, we have a lot of snowbirds, and that was an inconvenience. So that first year, it was literally bringing something that brought us 30 years closer: credit card acceptance, online access, smartphones. Our building inspectors were, again, now this is where the BlackBerry joke came, texting on the BlackBerry before they had the big keyboard. To say the letter C, you had to push 2-3 times. To say the letter E, you push this number. They were using those kind of phones in the field. How do you email or check your schedule when you're out and about looking at what house do I go to next on those kind of phones? They didn't even have smartphones. So the first year was literally catching us up to the early 2000s. And then the next 2 years was going through each department, seeing who's the most paper-based. They actually went last, because that's the bigger process of who has just old software, what's newer, what's better, like what project management software is out there, so that as projects go forward, everybody knows where it is, everybody knows the next step, nothing falls through the cracks. So we went through and updated software, updated equipment such as dual monitors, better laptops. And then the third year, we really started looking at, okay, now technology is app. We didn't have a township app where somebody could be on a sidewalk, they see a problem, they click the picture, send it through the app, and we can get out there. Also, it gives them news of what's happening. We didn't have a strong video part of our cable, because previously it had been run by newspaper directors. So we ended up realizing we needed somebody who knew more about YouTube and streaming, like what you're doing right now. This is how the world does communicate, especially since 2020 in many ways. So getting the new leadership in cable to help guide the vision of the future. And right now we're in the process, which started last year, of disaster recovery when a tornado hits our area, being paper-based and having everything on your servers locally, meaning everything's stored here in these buildings. If a tornado hit, how do you provide services? How do you pay employees? How do you even open the doors when there are no doors there? So now everything's moving to our safer cloud. So there's different feelings about the cloud. These are all dual, triple factor, all very safe, so that if something happens here, we can mobilize in another building and continue all services, because all of everything is backed up, whether it's our assessing department, our accounting department, our public safety access, all of it will be safely, that if anything were to happen with a tornado, as those are kind of increasing with the differences in the climate, we'll be ready to continue without any other disaster of telling our citizens, sorry, we weren't ready and all our servers were in that building. So that's where now it's that kind of boring part of technology, of the backups part.
What's important, and you're
Yes.
really covering it well. What are some of the issues regarding public safety in the township?
So that has been an issue probably since most noticeable since the recession. So in 2008 and 9, obviously there was a huge hit in our area on the ability to continue at the rates everyone was. So there were a lot of layoffs. The recession was rough. So we went from, at pre-recession, we had 67 officers. Well, I'll start first with fire, because that one's already solved and done. And honestly, people didn't even know how dangerous it was. And neither did I, even as a trustee, until I got to see the numbers as a supervisor. Our fire department was so understaffed with all the cuts over those 15-year or 10 to 15-year period, that they need 15 people on staff to run each department. Each fire station. We have 4. So that they can have all of the equipment, whether it's ambulances, fire engines, trucks, all of it available if there's a medical crisis or a fire. If it goes below 15, then we have to take equipment out. Well, they were so understaffed, they were only at 17, which sounds like, oh, but they have 2 extra. But in their contract, if they're sick, mind you, they can't come in. But even worse, they get injuries. There are constant injuries with firefighters and police because of their line of work. Sure. So if somebody is broken an arm or hurt their back on a fall or anything, that person's out. So in their contract, they're allowed to have up to 3 people either sick, injured, or on vacation. And that happens, and that's life. There were times we had to pull ambulances out of service or pull an engine out of service. And we as residents had no idea, because as a trustee, I didn't know that was going on. So the first thing I did was fire, because I didn't want any of that to happen. So we had new chiefs in the fire and in police. So Chief Leroy reached out and we said, okay, so what's our staffing level each year? Again, we didn't want to jump all the way back to 2008, or actually now we're higher. We needed to systematically say, how many do we add each year? So realistically, the International Association of Firefighters has suggestions of how many you really should have. So we decided to go for that national model. So we now have 20 at each station, so that even at 18, we're able to not only help all of our residents, but sometimes we'll get called away. For example, we needed help when there was a like lockdown issues at a high school or anything that pulls in resources. So then your neighbors have to come and help. The fire at Oakland Hills, that was a 4 or 5 day long fire. We needed help. So when we get called away to help others, as that person goes, it's called MABUS. You're a support service. We also have Oakaway. You support that team. You have extras to come in, so we don't lose any services. So the fire is not only pre-2008, which was only 17 per. Now it's actually 20 per. So we now are at that national level of excellence. And so that's all great. We're fully staffed. Every year you do get retirement, so it feels like whack-a-mole. You're fully staffed, some retire, fully staffed, some retire. And police was the next one. That's where they took a lot of hits too. A lot of attrition, where as people retired, they didn't fill it, as well as in 2019, they had to cut the administration decided to cut the traffic patrol, which is the 4 policemen and women that would go around the neighborhoods and kind of stop the speeders within our neighborhoods. So pre-2008, we were at 67 officers. When I took over in 2020, we were down to 62. And then each year, again, building it up, that by 2023, we were back up to 67 officers. So we're back up to that pre-cutting phase of the recession. We also added dispatchers. So we now have 13 dispatchers, because we handle our dispatch as well as Franklin for police and fire. We also added, what's really amazing, again, this is what you get with new leadership, is mental health. And the one good thing that came of COVID is it's okay to say you're not okay. So mental health is a huge problem of all ages. And we were able to do what's called the CORE program. It's a co-responder. And it is a social worker that's embedded with the police force. So they go out on a call when it's possible that's not really police services that are needed, but more mental health. So that person can de-escalate and help that person, but you still have the police presence in case there is something of a police matter. But then better is when it is just mental health, that person comes with Oakland County resources for mental health. So Hillary was our first one, and she was so well received, not just by residents, but by the police, because they also have someone now to talk about what they see every day. And what they see, especially in 2021 with all of the COVID issues and the depression that happened throughout the US, it hit here pretty hard. Suicides were at a really high rate. There was a lot of fires because people were living at home. So police and fire were really affected. And having that co-responder there actually helped the team too. And it was a pilot program for Oakland County. It was, we shared her with Birmingham, Auburn Hills, and us. It has gone so well that not only have we extended, now there's 4 communities sharing 3, but also Oakland County is now going to be rolling that out to all of the communities, because it helps so that the police can focus on police needs, but gives those residents that need something different. They need help with mental health. It gives them a resource as well. So we also have now 3 access to them and all of our records clerks. So in total, we have 95 in the department, which is actually higher than 2008, which had 87.
Dani, what have you achieved in receiving millions in grant dollars for the township?
So one of the first grants actually is regarding that core program. Haley Stevens. So we never used to get grant money from, I'll be really honest, as a trustee, I never saw any state or federal people giving us a lot of grant money, even my opponent. So it was really nice to see that as new blood came in, they realized they're not just representing us policy wise, they're representing us where they have money and access to hand out. And so there was a grant for the co-responder program. So it's $250,000 a year. We're in our third year. So that's up to $750,000 now. The biggest one that I'm really proud of is our TAP grant from SEMCOG and MDOT. It was almost $1 million. It was 970 some $1,000. There's almost $1 million. And it is the sidewalk program that is connecting Telegraph, the two sides. And this was a discussion in SEMCOG is all these really large roads literally divide your community on sides. So you have Telegraph Road where as a kid, there was Showcase Pontiac was actually there. And if your mom dropped you off on the wrong side for the movie, you had to run across 8 lanes of traffic to get to the other side. It's not safe. It's not likely. Only kids usually would be crazy enough to do it. So you have people who live on the west side that have to get in their car to go across the street to get lunch or vice versa. So now we have sidewalks that will connect the two groups, as well as all of those businesses, all of their workers can now use it. And we have an Olympic training center that's going to be opening up really. There's going to be breaking ground soon up in that area. So there'll be athletes that will be living there and wanting to walk to shopping and eating. So that grant helped us do this project that has been on our books for almost 20 years because Safety Pass started in, mine was the first year around 1999 or so on my street. So for 20 years, they couldn't do this because of the cost and the overwhelming project. So the SEMCOG is the Southeast Michigan Council of Government. It's a group I'm highly involved with, and MDOT, the good partnership Lori and I have there. We worked with the two of them, and they both co-funded the grant for that, and it was almost $1 million. Recently, Samantha Steckloff gave us $300,000. That was for police communications as well as turnout gear for the fire. We're using that for helmets because that keeps all the carcinogens on there, and the cost of the machinery for the helmet cleaning is $50,000. So it's one of those things that grants can help you acquire safety that you may not be able to get on your own. We also had a $180,000 EOC grant for our Emergency Operations Center, where if God forbid a tornado hits and we need to run out of a center, it has all the technology and everything we need to run from that section. We had that was from Andy Levin. We had a $500,000 SOAR truck grant from Mari Manugian, who actually took the seat of my opponent. And so as SMART gave us money for vehicles, it's just there's so many people now that we've reached out to saying, we have all these amazing ideas, we need your help. And they're receiving it well. And we're happy to be recipients over the last 4 years. That's helped their budgets tremendously.
Dani, I love your enthusiasm. We're running out of time.
Sorry.
Before we sign off.
All right. The one thing I really love is I was watching your program, and I love your focus on seniors. And something that I love about the township is our focus on seniors. I don't know if you've spoken with Christine before. She's our director. She's amazing. And I love, one of the things I'm most proud of is we focus on helping people age gracefully and live in place. So whether our senior center services are for fitness, people love the fitness things there, or for important things such as transportation and medical, Meals on Wheels, our adult day services, our friendship club for people with dementia and their caregivers. There's so much that we focus on in helping because we are one of the most mature in Oakland County in age. So one of the things I'm really most proud of is that we continue to try and see what else can we do. And I know we have a new program that we got another grant from Oakland County for, and that's going to be helping minor home repair is going to also extend now to snow removal. If you qualify for our minor home repair, you also now could qualify for help on, it's a health risk for somebody at a certain age to try and get out there and shovel that snow. So that's another one that we're going to be able to offer starting this year.
Dani, thank you so much for being our guest on Gracefully Graying. I really appreciate it. I wish you best of luck in your campaign. I want to thank our viewers for watching Gracefully Graying. And of course, I want to thank our sponsors for making Gracefully Graying possible. And of course, I want to thank Bloomfield Township and Bloomfield Cable. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you.